Welcome back to the Global Freedom Report, one of the greatest freedom anthems ever done. I'd rather die than be your slave. Poker Face has been dubbed the leading truth and freedom band in the Union. This four-piece band has made it their mission to expose the lies and scandals coming out of Washington, D.C. Poker Face mixes a variety of styles and orchestrations to take you on a true musical journey. Since 1989, over 20 years, my God, Poker Face has imprinted its unique sound style and, more importantly, message upon growing numbers of the freedom-loving public. They were the premier band that traveled with the Campaign for Liberty during Ron Paul's 2008 campaign, and I'm certain that they have numerous scheduled appearances in connection with his 2012 campaign. We visited with the official face of Poker Face before. Let's welcome back to the Global Freedom Report, Paul Topete of Poker Face. How are you, Paul?
Brent, how are you, sir?
Oh, weary, fighting the fight, screaming at all the massive injustice of it all, and hoping that some of it takes root, takes seed someplace else. Paul, you're a big-time patriot. I mean, you're more than just a band member and a vocalist and all of that. You really care about the affronts to freedom being perpetrated by outlaw government officials. That's how I see it at this point. I'm so beside myself. How would you characterize the year 2011 as it comes to a close in terms of the eternal struggle between government control and individual freedom?
I think the elites, in their hubris, they feel that they're about to pull the plug on the whole system and win. But in their pride, they're forgetting that we, the people, actually see what has been happening, especially since the bankers' bailout of 2008, and the Tea Party's coming on the scene, and now the Occupy Wall Street, which I tried to tell them early on, it's Occupy Rothschild, Occupy the Fed, Occupy Israel. Those are the things you really need to occupy. The people are starting to pay attention that problem is the bankers. Bankers make money on both sides of the war. They're the ones that, got $8 trillion of our dollars, or probably more like 16. And you know what? They should be arrested. This is my five-finger solution for the bankers. Arrest, seize, forfeiture, try, and if found guilty of having bloodstained hands for genocide and murder, execute them like we did to the Nazis during Nuremberg.
And I would add to that, though, and I like this addition to that, and their children to the fourth generation.
At least, man, because this is a familial thing. The trusts that are set up for the Rothschilds, which probably have about $500 trillion, the Rockefeller Trust that have about $100 trillion, and you go on down the line, Kunzlob, Schiff, Bronfman, Oppenheimer, Warburg, Pincus, all those. All their money has to be seized. I mean, if they can take your car, your boat, your house because there's a pot seed in it, then I think since there's no statute of limitations for murder and, better yet, genocide, I think basically we can go to the third or fourth generation that's even currently living because they've been benefiting from that blood-stained, ill-gotten gain money.
I would agree with that. But my question is more, if you look at January 2011 and now you look at December 2011, what has changed?
More people are living on the streets. More people don't have jobs to go to, or more people don't have homes to go to. And Poker Face has been saying for a long time that till the beer stops flowing and the sports stop showing, there won't be revolution in the street, or enough of the middle class doesn't have jobs to go to or homes to go to. So it's happening, and until there's enough suffering on the side of the people, until they're going to get off their lazy butt and start taking into account that, look, I'm tired of being entertained to death by my Talmud vision, okay? I'm tired of going to the church of football. It's time for me to stand up for my country while I still have the guns in my hands to take it back.
Well, you still have a country for which to stand up. Absolutely.
Amen.
Yeah, and, it's we've talked about it before. The government never knows when to stop. So inevitably, the government will keep squeezing and pushing and taxing more and more and more until more and more people have had enough. And I think that you're right. I think that is starting to show up, that more and more people, they may not know necessarily how to fight back, but they're ready to push back. And hopefully that's what we're looking at in 2012. The pressure feels more profound, seems more profound than ever before. Around the world, the Greek people are poised for rebellion. We just did a story. French parents took teachers hostage because they feared for their children. All over the world, people are being pushed by ever more intrusive regulations and tax increases to a point that they are starting to push back, what I talked about before the break. How close do you think, if at all, the world's people are to some form of a global revolution?
I tell the people of the world that if there's a global revolution coming, that they don't jump on the first bandwagon to push it that way, because most oftentimes it's a false flag and it's being manipulated by those above, like Occupy Wall Street that comes right out of the White House with Obama and his two stooges. What was it, Kasky and Lerner? Kasky came from Acorn and Lerner came from SEIU. And one of the first things you heard the occupiers say is like, we want 4 more years of Obongo. So, like, you definitely know that they're a little clueless. They're saying Occupy Wall Street, which is like the casino, when they need to go to the owners of the casino, which was like a tenth of a mile around the block, which was the Federal Reserve of New York. So, the revolution is coming because the bankers and the greed have been bleeding this country and this world dry. There's no more blood to give. It's time to take back that which they have stolen. If they earned it, fairly fine. That's one thing. I begrudge nobody when they earn something, but when you create the insecurity in the world, like what's going on right now, and you're doing nothing except intensifying and fanning the flames, like basically doing the greater Israel through Syria, through Libya, through Egypt. They want to go into Iran. At some point, the people are just going to say enough is enough, and whether America leads the way to the global revolution or, the rest of the people that are suffering even more than we are, started off, but the focus has to be the bankers. The only countries left that are like on the plate to get bombed into, out of existence are the ones that aren't part of the Federal Reserve System of the world. So the banker is the problem. The banker is what we need to focus on in every country.
Well, and I think that's very, very true. The bankers have always been the problem, but I think that the problem is not what the bankers have done in terms of the mechanic. I think the problem is that the bankers have successfully instilled into societies all over the world, the majority of them, a value system that says the more money you have, the better life you have. Most people in most countries operate under a basic variations on a theme, a basic value system that says money, position, power, and convenience are what life's about. And, what's missing there is truth, justice, liberty. What about truth? Oh, no. In America, you could lie all the time and people make a living at it. So truth, justice, well, justice is, in the eye of the beholder. Okay? And liberty, well, not at the expense of the collective right, of course, in the socialist world. So what's happened is the value systems have gotten all skewed. If you have a proper value system, the banksters don't gain any ground. They don't have any purchase from which to do their evil deeds.
Well, that's a good point that you bring up, and there's been one system consistently opposed to that, and that's been Christianity until basically the churches were taken over and allowed usury to come back into play. One thing I like about the Muslim nations is that they don't practice usury, and I think that's one of the reasons why they're on the target grid of the bankers, because they must succumb, otherwise the New World Order can't be birthed.
Yeah, and you called it exactly. I mean, Scripture prohibits usury. You can't have the bankers functioning in a system where truth, justice, and liberty come first.
Well, that's the problem with America. The way that this system was set up was for a system for a people that were, Christian in their ways. So as long as America was good, America was great. But we're no longer good. Okay, we're more of the Talmudic, Kabbalistic type of mentality, because that's what is put through the pop culture TV. And everybody's kind of, becoming Jews, I guess, is no better word for it, because the system of our way of life is not American anymore. It's a foreign type of ideology that over the last 50 to 100 years, especially since the Federal Reserve, was enacted, we become not Christians, not Americans, and, we're becoming hated by the world because we're acting just like those that are trying to change us.
And I would actually not, I think it's improper to say that it's Jews, because Jews cover so much and it's too broad a statement. It's the attitude that money is what's important, and property and position and power and whatever you have to do to get those things is okay. It's that attitude
Oh, wait. Let me be more specific. We have become Judaized because Judaism is the Talmud and the Kabbalah together. They don't even pay attention to the Torah, which are the 5 books we have in common with them. Okay, so it's a mentality that comes from those books that have basically been the bane of the world. All right, all the isms that have been. Go ahead.
Good clarification. It's Judah as opposed to Israel, and that's a good clarification. I'm going to ask you about the Occupy movement. You mentioned it a few moments ago. I want to ask you about this. The Occupy movement appears to have some kind of central organization behind it. I mean, it started out in New York, and suddenly it showed up in Los Angeles, Atlanta, New Orleans, Chicago, Italy, England, and while the romantics among us might like to believe that it's all spontaneous, it really does seem like it's got some central organization. And the impression I've gotten, and I want to know if you agree with this, disagree with this, but the impression I've gotten is that it's a Marxist movement. It may well be, politics makes strange bedfellows. It may be that we have allies in the Occupy movement because our common enemy is the bankers. But it does appear to be very socialistic in nature. Do you get that, or am I imagining it?
No, brother. There's 6 months before these Occupy movements started in every major city across the country. Kathy from Acorn and Lerner from the SEIU union side, they were putting out help wanted ads, basically looking for people they could groom to be the ground zero in all these different towns and countries around the world. So, look, like I said before, don't buy the first revolution that's coming, just like don't buy the first instead of Christ that comes, okay? The second one is the real deal. So don't jump on board just because it sounds good. It has to look and feel good, too. You know that you're doing the right thing because the tyranny has gotten to a choking level that it's either us fighting for our survival or we might as well basically be the slaves that they have been breeding us to be.
Americans, we just did a story a few minutes ago about a bunch of high schools in Southern California who've had their tubas stolen. Americans are stealing pieces of bridges and overpasses, signs, construction material, musical instruments, frequently just for the value of the scrap metal. Into what kind of creatures are Americans devolving? Or is this just an exceptional, a relatively few?
Unfortunately, because we've bred the morals out of our country. You can't mention Christ on TV unless it's in a disparaging way. It's only going to get worse, Brent.
Well, how do we fix that? I'm not willing to accept that. It's only going to get worse. How do we reverse that? Well, there's got to be an answer.
Brother, we're working on a political platform right now for a new party that we're trying to form called Party of the Anti-Zionists. And instead of the protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion, we're working on the protocols of solutions by the Learned Elders of Christ that basically are a vaccination to the ideology that is suffocating the world right now. And, protocol number 1 is basically arrest, forfeiture, seize, try, and execute bankers. And, we go from there. We have new energy technology to bring to the market. We have ways of dealing with the trash problem that we have, not just in this country, but around the world. And it just goes down the list. And there's people like Alan B. Jones, who has a new book out called Restoring America's Freedom, that on the governmental side, he gives a good way to do it without having to go to bloodshed. And we're all about trying to prevent the bloodshed, but we're also readers of history. So we've also accepted the fact that these powers that be are not going to give up the power that they've stolen from we the people over these many generations. So unfortunately, they're going to force it to come to using force to defend ourselves and then to take it back.
Talk to me for a moment about the disparity between the American sheeple and the American patriots. There are definitely some American patriots around. But while people all over the world are standing up and starting to fight back, life in America, with a K, goes on, and the sheeple continue their apathy and complacence. The question is, do you think that the balance between people who will take action and people who won't take action, do you think that balance is changing sufficiently that we have some hope in America?
I'd say that there's at least 1 to 3% that are very, very clued in and aware. And they're even in our armed forces, in our government, in our academia, they're throughout, but they're not going to give themselves away to be fired and to be taken out of play. When the push comes to shove, and there's 3 lines of demarcation in the sand for us as a band and as a country that will create the Second American Revolution. One is declaring martial law. Second is to have a real financial collapse of the market and of our economy so that we're really into a depression and not this decession that's half recession, half depression right now. And then the third would be gun confiscation. And if you read the news last week, they're all about this defense appropriations bill where they're trying to make all of us enemy combatants. So they're basically getting to the point that they're going to push us into it. And when you said, like, are more Americans going to jump on the bandwagon? Yes, because their bellies are going to be hungry. Hunger is a great motivator. And again, go back to the word. In the last days, a day's wage is just going to barely pay enough for the food that you eat for that day. And we're getting pretty close to it with the gas prices soaring, the cost of food at the market soaring. So I'm just seeing history being played out that Father was kind enough to foretell us to begin with.
Yeah, it was also written that it will be a woe to those who live through those times, woe to the women with children. There will be much tearing of sackcloth. And,
I'll give you a little positiveness. In Revelation chapter 9, it's mentioned twice for affirmation and witness to itself. God shortened the time period to 5 months. So he also said in that chapter 9 that he will protect those that have love for him. So those that don't will cry for death but won't find it. So I'm like, Father, bring it on. I want to live in a better world, a better place. You know, what's coming is better. We unfortunately have to live through the crap that, you know.
God willing, it couldn't be much worse.
Right. Well, you know, the devil was given this dispensation in time to do as much evil and to take as many souls away from the love. So, you know, every negative free will action has to play itself out right now. Otherwise, there's truly no free will. The good and the bad and the ugly have to happen. You know, it's like I'm tired of hearing from people, well, why does God allow a young child to get raped and stuff? And I'm like, well, because there's evil people in this world, and their free will have to be played out just as much as the good will has to be played out.
And also, when you're victimized or you run into serious adversity, it is an opportunity for you to grow in spirit, and that's the real reason we're here.
All the good, the bad, the ugly side, facets of love. You know, it's not all about the feel-good sex. It's about mercy. It's about the forgiveness. It's about doing the right thing when you don't want to do it, but you do it anyway because it's the right thing. It's all those many facets of love because that's the ticket to ride to go hang out with the one who created us. How cool of a plan is that?
Do you have any predictions as to what's going to happen here in the U.S. and around the world in 2012?
Yeah, we call it the day of the wave, when the checks stop rolling in. They threatened back in August to cut off the funding if they didn't get their next bump up for the bankers. But when the day of the wave comes is when they stop paying for the welfare checks, the disability checks, the unemployment compensation checks. When they stop giving, your pensions. Stay away from the cities, okay? Try to find refuge outside of the cities. If nothing else, all these wars that have been happening in the last, many decades, those that lived in the cities suffer. Those that lived in the countries, like even in Bosnia, the country life wasn't much different than when they were at war and they weren't at war. So try to find refuge. Try to get arms. Try to be able to protect yourself and your family. Try to protect the food stuff you may have. Find like-minded kinfolk and just bond with each other. Make amends with your brothers and sisters because what's coming is a lot uglier than what has been presented in any end of the world type of movies, man. So, get right with God. He loves you. He made you for his pleasure and he wants to hang out with you. And, the day of the wave is like, watch when the checks stop coming because that's when they pulled the plug on the system.
All right. You heard it here. Now, I just received from you a teaser of a song called Rise Again. Tell us something about Rise Again. What's the story behind it?
Rise Again is like it should be the Occupy theme, song of the movement because it deals with the problem, the bankers, and what they did to our grandparents, they're doing to us now. We just have very short memories, and they don't teach us this stuff in school, purposefully, because if they did, we would rise up and the bankers wouldn't be a problem anymore.
That's why it's the role of the parents to teach the children. It's not the role of the government, because the parents are supposed to, through oral tradition, teach them what happened in the previous generation so that they don't forget.
And if the parent doesn't do it, that's why the moms and the musicians and the artists are supposed to fill in that gap. And, I wish more of the mainstream artists would get it conscious and start using their talents to do the right thing and wake up their brothers and sisters.
All right, we got a little teaser here. It's not the whole song, but it'll give you, an 80-second or so piece of Poker Face's Rise Again. You can burn down our houses, but cannot burn down our spirit. You cannot stop us. We will rise again. Hey, I look forward to hearing the whole thing, actually. Where is Poker Face performing the rest of the year, and what are your plans for the primary and election season?
I'm sure there'll be some Ron Paul gigs. I think the first one we're talking about is going to be in Pennsylvania in January. But the main gigs that we have coming up that I know of are Knob Creek Machine Gun Shoot, second week in April, machinegunshoot.com. Our Freedom Palooza, which is going to be Upper Bucks County, Pennsylvania, 4th of July weekend, 1st through the 3rd, 3 days of music, 3 days of speakers. And then Live Free or Die Festival at the end of August up in Jaffrey, New Hampshire. Those are like locked.
Now, but, in terms of stuff that comes up, say, with Ron Paul and such, will people be able to find that out on pokerface.com?
Either through our newsletters, so go to pokerface.com, shoot us an email. We do reply to everything. We answer every phone call. Leave a voicemail. And, the best way to find out is get on our mailing list. And I'm sure there'll be lots to do. Our focus right now until pretty much April is to try to finish this new disc, Tyranny Befalls America, 13 new tracks. And like I said, the focus this time around is a source of malaise for the whole humanity, and that's the banker and his usury and greedy ways. So God's blessed us with some of our best music yet. The wall of guitar is still there. The multi-layer harmonies is still there. So if you like Poker Face before, we're just maturing as artists. So let me give a shout out to the guitar player Brett Griffiths, phenomenal brother. He's also doing drum tracks for the disc, and then Dennis Bodler on bass. So God's blessed me with a cool set of brothers here.
Fantastic. And that's Poker Face, folks, and it's www.pokerface.com. When I listen to that little teaser for Rise Again, and I don't know how much of this is filtered through my own prejudice, my own bias, because I'm very angry at the injustice I see around me. We just did a story about a pig thug cop who murdered a man in a wheelchair, supposedly because the guy in the wheelchair pointed a knife at him.
Oh, my God.
So he said, okay, that means I could take my gun and I can murder the guy. Of course, they didn't call it murder, okay, and they didn't call it pig thug cops, but, you are what you are known by your deeds.
Well, here in Allentown...
My point is, I'm very angry about all of it, and when I listen to Rise Again, I get the impression that there is an anger that is simmering, either in the music, in the society. Is that just me, or is it becoming angry?
Yeah, it is becoming angry. This band would rather write some good love songs and some, positive music that, if we didn't have to focus on the negative side of life, because we're really positive people, but unfortunately the news media isn't focusing on the problem. So again, it's up to the artists to convey that message to the people. And best way we found to get around those walls is to put a cool mantra and a good beat and wrap it in some good music with some harmonies. And it's not the end-all be-all for everybody, but for those that love rock and roll, there's a place on the musical playground for Poker Face's music.
And it's one more way to get out your rants and raves as well.
Yes.
To express the outrage, because that outrage has to be expressed. I mean, it's like the Nazi atrocities. Someone has to express that it's an atrocity.
Well, it's time for the people of the world to say enough is enough, man. And if we all woke up for just 15 minutes, all together at one time, we could put this problem in a box and be done with it.
All right. Paul, I want to thank you so much for spending this time with us, and God bless you and the group. Thanks for everything you've done. Have a happy holiday, a happy new year, and a lot of success in 2012. Paul Topete of Poker Face, www.pokerface.com. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you, Brent. God bless.